All right, guys. Hello and welcome to Recency Bias, a podcast on the Fight Night Podcast Network. I am John Franklin. I am joined as always by Kate the Great, aka Hot Take Kate from SophistiKated MMA. Kate, how are you?
I'm doing great. Can't really breathe, but good.
You have a exhausted tone to you. So did those fights take a lot out of you?
Oh my God, I'm exhausted. I'm absolutely exhausted. I don't know. I mean, I'm thrilled that we're getting so spoiled in all of these fantastic fights. I mean, I'm actually having trouble remembering every single fight of the evening. I had to go back and look at all my notes because I'm like, what actually happened? It was too much.
Yeah, the Apex is really showing up, and we talked about the smaller cage. We talked about all the reasons why it could be, but and we'll get to some of that stuff, I'm sure. But all right, listen. Last week we discussed how to give you a last name while we keep yours under wraps. So I decided the way to do it was very simple. We'll do a nice little F, Marry, Kill, and whoever you choose for Mary, you take their last name for the week. So we decided it was going to be fighters, but for tonight, I have a curveball. First one out of the gates. Let's do F, Marry, Kill, Jon Anik, Michael Bisping, Dominic Cruz. Who you got?
Shoot. I think I'm going to have to go F, Anik, marry Bisping, and kill Cruz.
Wow, surprising answers. Okay, so for the evening.
I really like Cruz, but sometimes he's kind of the John Madden of MMA.
Okay, so it gave us what we needed, which is for the evening, you're Kate Bisping. All right, let's get on with the fights. It was a fun night in the Apex, at the Apex. I'm not sure which one it is. We'll go in the Apex. Lots of fun fights throughout. The main event had the most serious stakes as Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker took to the octagon looking to set up fights with either Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, or an outside shot at Khabib. Obviously, Poirier's already lost to him. Hooker, it would take a seriously impressive showing to get his butt to Khabib. Obviously, that didn't happen. So let's open up the podcast with you. Okay, so you have one of two choices. You can either start the podcast with your hottest take of the night, or you can save it for the end. But we both know that I'm going to ask you to rank this fight all time for you, this main event. What did you think? And I know it's early, but this is recency bias.
I think this is my favorite fight this year so far.
Okay. So a lot of people were talking about Weili Zhang. We just had Burgos and Emmett, but I'm with you. There was something about these guys that they withstood. Okay, and let me just say this. The stakes are not the only thing that make great fights. Obviously, you can have a great fight of the prelims, but there's something different when Shane Burgos did what they and Josh Emmett did what they did, and when these two guys who are at the championship level get into that kind of fight, meaning both guys are capable of taking out 95% of the guys on the roster, and only for these two to rise to the occasion on the same night at that high of a level is, I think, what I'm with you. I do think this is something different because of who they are and because it was the main event.
There was a different level, because I know that just last week I said that the Shane Burgos fight, one of my favorite fights of the year, absolutely amazing. This fight had a different level of heart. There was just something, you could see it on their faces, this just level of sheer desperation in every single punch. Like, I have to make this count, because that division is just, oh my God, it's so stacked. So stacked. Where do you even begin?
It's interesting. We talk about Dustin Poirier. I don't think anybody should be my son's hero except for me. I want to be his example, right? But if I had to choose someone that wasn't me, you could do a lot worse than Dustin Poirier. And Dustin Poirier is a quote machine. One of my favorite quotes of all time. All time, Dustin Poirier said, we get up because the ground is no place for a champion, which I love. And the one that he said tonight is, you're not in a fight until you have something to overcome.
Absolutely.
And that's what I saw out of this. I mean, he was getting shredded a little bit in that first and second round. I mean, Dan Hooker looked sharp
Oh my
in that
gosh.
first and second round. To
I
the
did
point
not
where,
expect it to be as close as it was. I really didn't.
to the point where I thought that Hooker was going. I just didn't see Dustin. I knew that he had the heart, but I mean, listen, he got sniped by Conor McGregor, and I know it was a long time ago. That is Poirier, but it showed you that it can be done. He can be overwhelmed by a guy.
Oh,
And
totally.
Hooker was so accurate early on. You were just like, this could be it, you know, if he walks into that knee. So just give me your thoughts, just to put an end to talking about the main event, and then we'll get to the typical questions.
Sure.
How do you put a period on this fight? I mean, how do you?
I mean, like his quote said it best. Like, he had something to overcome. He had, he went into his fight with Khabib knowing that it was going to be difficult and knowing that it was a long shot. And even though I think he really, really wanted it, you could almost tell when he walked out that he knew that he was going in probably going to lose. And going into this fight, you could tell he was like, no, I am taking this home. Like, this is going to be how I show people that I belonged in that arena with the champ, that I belong in those championship discussions, and that belt belongs around my waist. Like, he looked amazing. And I think that the only gripe I had about his performance is that there were just a few times where he was, oh my gosh, he was throwing that overhand right, and it just, like, if it had connected, would have been ridiculous. But there were a few too many times where he swung it, and I'm like, oh, you're rushing that. You're getting a little too emotional. And I was just worried about the moment that he was going to get clipped, just swinging for that finish.
Yeah, I think that he and this begs a question for a much later date, and this is, we do recency bias here, but we might find out that this kid is better than the majority of the fighters, but just not quite Khabib and Conor.
Right.
And I would like to see him in there, with all those guys. But I mean, he was not really in it with Khabib, and he said there was a lot of reasons. And I mean, he's the kind of guy that should be able to beat Khabib, but Khabib was just on that next tier. So I'm gonna press you for the first hot take of the night. Do you think Dustin Poirier ever beats Conor McGregor or Khabib Nurmagomedov?
I think he could beat Conor McGregor. And I'll tell you why I think he could beat Conor McGregor. Because when you go back and watch that fight with Conor McGregor, I thought that he was hitting him in the back of the head, and it wasn't that many shots. I thought that stop was a little fishy. I did. There's a whole lot of theories that people have as far as Conor McGregor's rise, but we never really saw them fight. Like, we never really got the chance to really see them go the distance or see a lot of exchanges between the two of them. And he's a very different fighter now than he was then. He was really emotional then and really hot-headed, and I feel like he's calmed down a lot. What I would really like to see, and I know that this might be reaching, but there's a chance, I would love to see Justin Gaethje beat Khabib, and then see Poirier Gaethje 2
For the belt.
I think that'd
be a great fight.
A fight. Oh my gosh,
that'd be a great fight. And I think maybe to push your point a little bit forward, I think that when he fought Conor the first time, there was a little bit, like you said, of it was a big moment, it was a big stage. I don't know if Poirier was ready for that, but the other part of it was that was back when people thought that Conor was all talk, and that he couldn't possibly. And I think people got reeled in by that. And I think Poirier is guilty of that. I think he got reeled in by this. This guy can't possibly be as great. No, I mean, he wasn't a 2-division champion, Conor McGregor, when Dustin Poirier fought him. He was just this guy who had a big mouth and tattoos and his hair. He was just something else. So I think a rematch would be very interesting. All right, let's move on. I want to talk about who won the night. I will only accept one answer from you, and I'm going to give it to you. Latori Gonzalez won the night. Clearly, She cornered Mike Perry. No one thought she could do it. She iced his back and told him to throw. I will just, if I'm going to cape for Latore Gonzalez, this is how I'm going to do it. She said very specifically, Kate, for Mike Perry to punch him in the face, and he punched him in the face a lot.
He did do that.
So Latore, I think, won the night. Who do you think won the night?
Oh, I mean, we've already covered all my points. Poirier won the night. I mean, just far and away for me. I absolutely loved watching that fight. Held my breath the entire time. But yeah, seeing him back in the win column was awesome for me.
Sometimes there's guys, and Connor does this, but sometimes there's guys who find a way to reinforce their brand. And I don't want to get off on this branding thing, because I think what Poirier did was admirable, but he, has a foundation. He's a guy who markets himself in certain ways. Some guys get a chance to reinforce their brand in the way they fight. And everything is kind of the synergy comes together. And I think tonight Poirier pushed himself forward in a Poirier way. Had he come out and knocked Dan Hooker out in the first, that's not Dustin Poirier. It's like, when Cowboy Cerrone takes a fight on a week notice and then brings his kid into the cage, that's reinforcing the Cowboy brand, right? He's a crazy guy. He's got the cowboy hat on. Here's his son with the ear. Like, I think that's what Poirier did tonight. So from that perspective, I'll give him 1B to Latore Gonzalez.
He's all heart, man. He is. He's all heart.
That was on full display tonight. All right, let's talk about who peaked tonight. I'm going to go ahead and tell you mine.
Okay.
I have two. Gian Villante might have peaked in that beginning of the third round. And I think that was the peak of his career. It was like, all right, I put on the weight, and, he almost had him. But when we get to he did. He was right there. I honestly think Mike Perry peaked tonight.
You're taking my answer.
Go ahead. Tell me why then. If it's the same answer, I'll let you explain.
I think Mike Perry peaked, but not for the reason that this is as high as he could potentially go, even though maybe. I think he peaked because how do you get any better than showing up with your girlfriend? Did you see that video he posted with her holding pads? I almost peed my pants. Oh my God, I was laughing so hard. I was like, this is gonna be fun. I still had him winning. I had him picked to win, but I don't know how it gets any better than being able to say some really ridiculous stuff like, I don't need a corner, and I'm gonna put my baby in my corner and have it work out for you. How does it get any better than that?
I think it peaks in the way Mike Perry wants to peak, which is, I said I was going to do this. I did it. I was right. You were wrong. If I go back to, and listen, I've said this on Twitter. No one was really supporting me in this, but I think it's true. And he touched on it in a post-fight interview. I think Mike Perry is an individual with a very cluttered mind for a number of reasons. It's certainly not cluttered with, things that would give you college credits, but it's cluttered nonetheless. And I think that not having a corner helps him, because here's why. I think when his corner man comes in, he already has in his brain what he wants to do anyway. So now he's trying to get through the things that he wants to do while he's listening to his corner man, which makes things worse for him. For Mike Perry, for who Mike Perry is, he's not what you would call coachable. So for him, it's having a corner man is an issue. And I think having someone that ices his back and tells him he's doing good, and I think that's what he wants. So from his perspective, I don't think that the MMA world will let him continue to do this, because one of those things that, like, everybody's just waiting to tell him I told you so. So the first time he loses, the guy lost with cornerman. But the first time he loses with Latore Gonzalez, it's going to be like, oh, it's so stupid to have no corner.
Right. And I could not agree more on the coachability aspect. And I think that there are certain fighters who have a level of talent and strength. And I mean, you saw, like, his grappling totally impressed me in this. I was not expecting that. But it was, I think Michael Bisping was saying it, where it was just sheer strength that was helping him in those moments. So he's got a lot of tools at his disposal that make him a threat. But there's only so far that you can take that. You do need to have those people to push you a little bit harder and to give you the strategy. And while his cluttered mind may not do so well with coaching, it's only going to take you so far. Like there's only so far that you can go on your own steam before you need a team. Now, I was listening to his post-fight or not post-fight interview, but the press conference. I only caught the last few minutes of his, but he mentioned that what he's looking for is more of a partnership, friendship, somebody that can kind of ride with him on this journey. And I think that if he found the right person, that maybe some of that coachability could develop. But for him, it's definitely going to be, it's going to need to be the right fit, because the second that no longer is gelling for him, it's over. He's not going to listen to anything that you say.
Well, and you have to read between the lines. And I think that he is not, he doesn't feel like he wants people to tell him what to do. He doesn't handle that well, clearly. And I'm with you. I think that if he found the right group of guys, I mean, if you can make an argument that he wants the hillbilly version of city kickboxing, which is everybody gets along and everybody's all copacetic, and that he wants that.
What is the hillbilly version of that?
Let's hope he finds it. Let's hope he discovers it. Maybe he has to make it. But I think that or Florida man, he's more of a Florida man than the hillbilly. But that version of city kickboxing. The thing that pops in my head right now would be shitty kickboxing, but that's a story for another day. That's an easy joke that was low hanging fruit, so I'll just grab it. No, I would say I think that he's an interesting case moving forward, and I hope he finds what he wants. But he could definitely run this out again, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it seemed to work for him. All right, let's talk about who sets themselves up best for their next fight. There was a lot of people that were succeeding.
Yeah.
It was a drop off from the main event, was like serious stakes, and everybody else was just kind of like elevated prelim fighters.
I do have one though.
What do you got?
I think Maurice Greene actually set himself up pretty. I mean, he actually had a call out mid card with Boser. Like they already had, a little bit of a mix up, and there's maybe a little bit of drama there. I think Anik tried to suggest that Boser was throwing shade, and Maurice was like, no, there's no shade. I wasn't ducking him, none of that. And it's like, okay, but we maybe could work that angle. So I mean, there's nothing like having a call out on your card, and that finish of his was pretty fun. I'm gonna talk to some of the coaches that I know and some of the guys that do, grappling and jujitsu, because I need somebody to walk me through exactly what happened there.
What you just saw, yeah. I don't think they're gonna listen. The last thing that I ever want to say is the guy was looking for a way out, right? But people say that, and people say that a lot of Chael Sonnen has spoke a lot about the reason why early in his career he got submitted a lot is because he just wasn't ready to win for whatever reason. And he said against Anderson, it was not the greatest triangle that the world has ever seen. He wanted a way out. He took it. Gian Villante was by no means, that wasn't the greatest. It looked like an aggressive hug, basically, but his breathing was cut off. And I mean, there was something there. It just wasn't enough.
Smothered.
I think that he was gassed and he wasn't able to breathe.
Yeah.
And he did not have what he needed to get out of that hold.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the greatest chokehold ever.
It didn't look like he actually got choked out.
Right.
What it looked like to me was that there was a choke that was pretty locked in, but his face was so smothered into Greene's body that like the combination between getting, torqued into that position and not being able to breathe because somebody's flesh is pressed up against your face, maybe he was just like, oh, I can't. And I didn't write it down. How long was there left to go? Was there a minute left?
So left in the fight, it happened at 3:44 of round 3.
Yeah,
So a minute
yeah.
15. Yeah.
There's a good chance that because he didn't see a way out of that, it's like, I don't want to be stuck in this guy's armpit for another, 45 seconds to a minute. And who can really blame him?
Yeah, there was a lot of people, I think, that under the right circumstances set themselves up well. Listen, I'm so enamored with Khama Worthy's nickname of the Death Star and all the potential that gives me to tweet that I would love to see where he's going next. But I really think that if certain people, okay, and again, I'm going to quote Chael a couple times tonight, but here's another one, which is he says the post-fight interview is the first step of the next fight. And if you don't, it's not the last step of that fight. It's the first step of the next fight.
Totally.
Because what's done is done. So, and the way he really puts it, and I'll expand on this, is anything you say about the fight that just happened in your post-fight interview or anything after it, you're now working for the media, for the like that's you're helping the media out. So if you tell somebody what you were thinking and how that fight is done for you, you've done it. Whether you tell them all your techniques or none of them, or you just said whatever. That you're helping someone else out when you talk about the fight that just happened. When you start talking about the next fight, now you help yourself out. So I think that Tanner Boser and Maurice Greene did a lot towards that end. So sometimes you see something and you have to steer into it. You go, I was not expecting this to materialize in the way it did tonight, but it did. So let's steer into it. In the same way, I really think Kay Hansen should steer into this little Ronda stuff. Like, she's my idol. I mean, she kind of talks. You ever see somebody that, like, I went to high school with this girl who was such a Drew Barrymore fan. She talked like her. And I was like, this is weird. Like, she told me that she was a fan and she had like that kind of whatever. And I was like, it's weird that that's who you're a big fan of, and yet you sound like her. So I think that Kay Hansen, I don't know if she should go like single white female on her and start, dressing like Ronda and dating a 6'8" guy with a beard. But I think that she should lean into, if this is what you think I am and you can market me this way. For example, if she can chase arm bars, go for it. Do it.
Sure. I think I like lean into it in the sense that, like, if somebody makes the reference, she shouldn't be like, oh, no, I'm not. I don't want to be associated that way. Yeah, steer into that if somebody brings it up. But
say you're flattered. That's what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I always believe in, instead of being a second-rate version of somebody else, be the best-rate version of yourself. There's never going to be another Conor McGregor. There's never going to be another Ronda Rousey. Like, it's just they came up in an interesting time with a lot of circumstances that I don't think will ever be recreated. So while it would be fair to draw the comparison, I hope she doesn't run with it. Steer into it when somebody says it, sure, but don't run with that one.
That's fair. I would. My only pushback to that would be that there will never be another Michael Jordan, but Kobe Bryant got close, and he made no bones about the fact that he was trying to be like Mike. So I'm with you. I do think that it's a bit risky in that if you try and do it and you don't, because how many next Jordans were there that never happened? So yeah, it's risky, and it's better to just be yourself. Who's someone who happens to, it's like. It's better to be inspired by the Beatles than to try and be the Beatles. You just say, oh, yeah, they're a huge influence over us, but we do our own thing. I agree. Yep. All right, up next, let's talk about the moment of the night. Because this is new, but I have to bring this up. And if you don't have one, it's cool, but I have to bring this up. Where Maurice Greene was in that fight, and then ultimately what came of it. Like, his post-fight interview, just being a mess. Like, this guy had lost 2 fights, brought his family to New Mexico. Side note, not for nothing, the guy was sure looked awful lot like John Jones with some of those kicks, and the referee kept warning about eye pokes. So, but my point is that he sunk all this into his future. And in that third round, it looked like, man, that was not a great bargain on your part, or not a great gamble. And he found the submission. Sometimes you say to yourself, at that time, the submission was in there. Listen, I'm not an overly religious person, but I mean, it was by the grace of God that Maurice got out of there with a victory. Now, he might have gotten the decision, But that, and then afterwards, he's so emotionally can't even talk. Like this guy went from you're out of the UFC potentially to now you're a great story. Mm-hmm. And in another world where ESPN is really tapped in effectively to the UFC and the way that they're doing stories on them on SportsCenter like they do on other sports, he's a guy that you would make a feel-good story on the Sunday SportsCenter. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where he turned himself into. Totally. That was my moment of the night because he was so close to it being something different. And he recognized that. Well, I mean, obviously more than I would because it's his life. But the fact that all came together and then he got the call out. It was just a lot. It was that post-fight press conference. There was a lot going on for that guy. And his life might have changed tonight. So for me, that was my moment of the night. What about you?
I wrote down like 5.
Let's hear them all.
Can't pick one. There was a moment where Poirier dropped Hooker. I want to say it was in the 3rd round that I was just thinking, oh my God, this is it. When Mike Perry yelled after his win, I was getting a little bit, I was really happy for him. I mean, he's kind of a weird guy, but I was really happy for him. I have Greene and his submission and his interview. Sato, I mean, that knockout. Yeah. I honest to God had this is how good the rest of this card was. I had forgotten about it.
Yeah.
How do you forget about that? How do you forget about a spectacular 1-2? Just, oh my God, it was great. So I have absolutely no idea how to pick one. This card was so good.
Listen, Mike Perry is a star. It's funny. He's got a lot of things in his past that are regrettable. But he's kind of like that uncle of yours, that he has these gets drunk at barbecues and wants to fight the whole family. But one year he shows up for Thanksgiving dressed in khakis, has a tie on, and you're just like, all right, Uncle Billy, it's good to see you.
With a can of cranberry sauce unopened.
Yeah. And he's trying to be a part of it. And you're just like, all right, come on in. He's trying. My other moment of the night, and I should have saved this for not for nothing, but this is my other moment that I thought was interesting. Someone hit, God, what fight was it? Where there were late punches. And Bisping goes, that reminds me of Dan Henderson at UFC 100. And that was when Dan Henderson knocked Michael Bisping out at UFC 100. And I was like, that's probably the first time I've ever heard someone troll themselves. It was just a great, funny moment. But
Bisping actually does that a lot.
He's self-deprecating.
Closely, he is like the king of self-deprecating humor when it comes to his running commentary. Although he did upset me a couple times tonight because he was saying things and I'm going, Bisping, shut up.
Yeah, him and Cruz.
You're too loud.
I used to joke that Michael Bisping and Brendan Fitzgerald are like brothers-in-law who have to be friends, or their wives want them to be friends, but they're not really that tight.
Yeah.
Bisping and Cruz are just like, they're like legit brothers, and they have a back and forth, but they like each other. It's an odd relationship. They step on each other's toes. Cruz is just putting Cruz in the booth with anybody else. I think it's just a waste of time. I mean, he's so verbose and he knows so much. Like, what's the point? Just let him be in there.
He's so no nonsense about it, though. Like, he won't be the one to make the jokes. He's the one that you listen to when you want to know, like, exactly what's going on. But Bisping, while he has a lot of really great insight, will also make some really fun jokes. And what was it? He had a moment in the Poirier and Hooker fight, and I can't remember, but he said something, and one of them was like, "Yeah, listen to Bisping." Like they heard him.
Oh yeah.
What happened?
It was the low kicks. Hooker kept kicking. He kicked Poirier in the cup twice. And
right.
And Poirier and Hooker's like, Bisping's like, enough with the low kicks or the groin shots. And then Poirier goes, listen to Bisping.
I know that people miss the fans, but I'm really gonna miss the totally unique exchange between not just the corners and their fighters and being able to actually hear what's going on, but the commentators and the fighters and the corners and the all the all the exchange, everybody that's been able to hear anything. I've found it to be so fun, and I'm really gonna miss it when it's gone. I am.
Yeah, there's been nothing like it. I mean, the Contender Series is similar, but it's like not at that high of a level. These are people that are fighting on regional fights anyway.
There's
Normally,
way too many people that they bring along
yeah, it's
who
true.
aren't their corner, who don't know what's up, and who shout a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, I get that it's your mom and everything, but
You know what? That sparked. Well, now we're back to Mike Perry again. That sparked something in my brain. And listen, I am not the guy that's like the white knight for women's issues. I mean, obviously, they're important to me, but I'm not the guy that tries to crowbar them into things. Here's my one take on the whole Tori Gonzalez thing, and I mentioned this on our stoppage, and I tweeted it, and I'll mention it one more time. It's unfair to me that because LaToya Gonzalez was Mike Perry's girlfriend, that immediately she was dismissed. And this is what I mean by that. If it had been Mike Perry's brother, who also hadn't fought,
right.
no one would have said a word. If it had been Mike Perry's father, who also hadn't fought, no one would have said a word.
Right.
Now, in fairness, Diego Sanchez had a coach who we've been critical of. Ronda Rousey had a coach who we've been critical of. So it's, I mean, other people have been criticized as well who are males. But it's just the quickness of the dismissal. And I get it's like, oh, my girl's in my corner. You know, it's like you know, your mom still making your lunch, huh?
Sam Alvey has his wife corner in his fights,
right,
all the time, and I've heard people make the same even though she does have experience,
right.
And every right to be there, not just as a support system for him, but she does know something. And I've heard people make comments about that too, and it's like,
yeah,
how come nobody makes the same comments about Michelle Waterson's husband?
Right, true.
They don't. So, and
I think we'll reach a point, hopefully, where there's a lot more female head coaches. You don't see that a lot.
There's a reason that I've been very passionate about getting as involved as I possibly can. Part of that is more representation for women, and I'm not like a gung ho, like, you know, I'm not going to be marching with signs or anything. But I do think that it's a big deal for more women to feel comfortable in this sport because it's amazing and everybody should get to enjoy it.
I think that where it will get interesting is when the women's divisions are so young that no one's really left the women's division and had to figure out what to do next because a lot of them still fight. Or they were so big they've gone on to other things. But like, I'll give you a perfect example. Someone like Miesha Tate. You know, Miesha Tate used to be in Brian Caraway's corner and she got critical. You know, she did the whole, like, she said one time, just coast, baby, and that she got hell for it. Now, Miesha Tate's a better fighter than Brian Caraway was. So I think she's someone where if she didn't go work for one championship and she retired and opened a gym where she trained women fighters, she's someone that would be taken very seriously. But that's not Miesha Tate's path, you know? So when there's more women, I think, that get out and want to do that thing, it'll swing.
There's not enough in this space overall. I mean, you've seen my channel and how many comments I get about, you know, what I do or don't know. Never mind the fact that I work at an MMA gym and I spend as much time as possible learning from everyone that I can. I train when I can. Like, it doesn't matter. It's completely tossed out just because I'm a girl sometimes. And I don't resent people for that because, you know, like you said, it's still really young and people have certain expectations, but I hope eventually that will change.
Well, it's interesting because it's such you really have to take people at what they say because there's no way to equate it. And I'll give you the example. I've been watching fights forever, boxing. I mean, I'm one of those guys that was there at the beginning. So, but I've never fought professionally. And so Craig and Matt, who do the picks, put out a video, and then in the comments, someone was like, these guys don't know anything, they never fought. So I'm like, okay. But my question would be, so if you're a guy my age, like you're 40 years old or 43 or whatever, and you've been watching fights for 20 years, are you more or less knowledgeable of a kid that's been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years who's only 20? Who knows? I mean, who really can quantify that? So my thought is just you have to take people at what they say, and either you agree with it or you disagree with it, because people that are paid analysts sometimes get things wrong who fought, and it's such a weird thing to try and figure out because you're only anybody, no matter who you are, you're only just guessing. You're only just
And
trying to figure
sometimes you're
out.
too close to it.
Yeah.
Like, how many times does it happen that you're way too close to your own fight, or to your own coaches, or the coaches are too close to the fighters? I mean, that happened to Ronda Rousey.
Right.
I think her coach was way too close. Oh, her striking is impeccable, and da 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 da. And then Holly Holm gets in there and gives her a clinic.
And that's the other thing. Non-fighters can be objective in a way that fighters can't.
Exactly.
Because it'll get back to you. It'll get you even hear like guys like Cruz and Bisping walk certain things back. Like I think Bisping was talking about Mickey Gall tonight, and he goes, "Well, Mickey Gall doesn't have enough pop in his hands." He goes, "I'm not trying to criticize him." Well, yeah, you are. You should be able to say that Mickey Gall doesn't have knockout power without Mickey Gall thinking that you think he's like soft or something. Like it's not. So that's where it gets. That's where I think that when you're a fighter or a former fighter, you're in a difficult position as well.
It's tough though, because fighters are way more sensitive than people think they are.
And
like,
with that, we'll move on to tomorrow's headlines to keep Hot Take Kate. I can't even say it, out of trouble. Because I think you were about to get yourself into something there. So tomorrow's headlines, I will tell you mine. You can tell me if you either like them or have better ones. If you like them, we'll just go with them.
Okay.
Tomorrow's headline for me, Diamonds Are Forever is one I would go with. And the other one, this one you got to pay attention to. It's easier to read than it is to hear.
Okay.
Poirier offs the hook.
That's funny. I like that. The one that I had a very I wouldn't say that this is the New York Times. This is more the Washington Post. I had Dustin Diamond Poirier shines.
I like it. It's very you even said it with a very angelic look on your face.
Because that's just how I felt. I was all warm and fuzzy inside.
Okay, let's get to Not For Nothing. Before we do, I have to just say this. Is there a point that you wanted to make? Because I don't want you to feel like I stifled you, but I felt like I was trying to.
No,
Okay,
I've gotten to say a whole hell of a lot.
All right, let's talk about Not For Nothing. I had a bunch, just because, and they're kind of like just random thoughts. Let me see if I can form into something. Not for nothing, but John Villante. There's other ways to put on weight than just in your belly. You can gain muscle. There's other ways to do it.
Oh man.
I mean, listen, I'm all for #dadbod, but it just seemed like it was presenting some problems in there for you, young man. So maybe if you're going to fight a heavyweight, we take a different approach.
I thought that the photo that I had seen, I saw a meme where it was showing him at, I think it was when he was at 185, and then him now, and it was some quarantine meme, like before quarantine, after, you've probably seen a lot of those.
That's what it was. That's how they did them before and after quarantine.
I thought it was photoshopped.
Yeah.
Until I saw him walk out tonight, and I went, "Oh my God!" It was
and listen,
real.
I'm not here to toss shade at the kid, because I've fluctuated my weight in my life.
He was putting on a great fight.
He was playing it really smart. I
thought he was what he was showing in that fight was why you bet on experience.
Yes.
Or I should say why I typically bet on experience, because there's a huge difference between the guy that has seen 18 fights and the guy who has seen 8. Just
I agree.
Massive.
And you know what's funny? I thought that was going to materialize itself in that Kay Hansen fight that never did. I thought this girl was a former, she was fighting Frey, was a former Invicta champion. Now, when I looked at, she had another hour. And guys, if you want to know where I get these stats from, I've seen this before, but I've rediscovered it. It's called MMAformguide.com. They break these fights down. They have like stats, and they have stuff like octagon time and gym teammates and all. They do a great job, and I figured I'd throw them some love. But my point is that Frey had like an hour more of octagon time. She didn't have that many more fights. I think she had like maybe 5, but that's a lot, in terms of that. And I thought I just didn't see her saying, "I'm the more experienced fighter, this is how it's going to happen. And sometimes when a fighter has such talent, I'll give you an example. I thought what happened in the Julian Erosa fight is what was going to happen in the K Hansen fight, where Woodson came out looking like gangbusters, and then Erosa said, "Wait a second, I can handle your power. I'm going to walk you down. We're going to go to the ground. I'm going to choke you out." I thought that Frey was going to have that kind of a game plan for Hansen, but Hansen was just too much for her. But more to your point, that's sort of what you would expect from Gian Villante.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, the only reason I'm throwing this kid shade is, I feel bad for him. At 85 and 205, this guy is a Long Island, New York stud. He's beach ready. And then today came out like, it's after Thanksgiving dinner. And I'm like, dude, I'm not saying that I get it.
Maybe his game plan, because, and I've heard this from a lot of fighters. It's sometimes you get so caught up in the, like, I have to eat a certain way, I have to work out a certain way, I have to keep my body at this like peak physique level. Like, they get so caught up in that sometimes they kind of, I don't want to say the fighting takes a back seat, because obviously it doesn't, but like they don't give that as much focus as they should. And maybe in his mind, okay, I've done the, like you said, beach bod, Jersey Shore, beautiful body thing. Maybe now I just focus on my cardio, and I focus on my striking, and I focus on my strategy, and I don't worry so much about what I'm eating or what I'm doing in the gym. Maybe that was his game plan. I mean, you can say what you will, but dad bods have not done so poorly in MMA.
Well, you know what I do if I'm him, because you and I talk about the PR aspect of it and the marketing and all that. If I'm Gian Villante, I come out and I say, "Listen, I tried the Cormier approach. It didn't work. I'm gonna go back to. I just thought that if I just look like Cormier, that maybe I would fight like him."
If he says that, Cormier is gonna bring it up the very next chance he can.
How great would it be just to move on from it? If you just made that the line, what you would do effectively is you would steal the best line from everyone else, and then just move on.
Yep.
Like, I said the best thing you can say. You guys, I got
steer into it.
He's like, I got the self-ownage. So a couple other not for nothings. Love the Death Star. I love that nickname. It's amazing. Now, the reason why I love it is two reasons. One, it paints you as this person who could destroy an entire planet. But also, if we check the history books, Death Star got blown up twice. So
the Death Star had a really big weakness.
Yeah. So either way, yeah. And I think Worthy might have a really big weakness, as we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So my next one is not for nothing, but the Mike Perry apology line starts right next to me. So if you guys want to get in and tell Mike Perry, "Hey, buddy, we didn't think you could do it. You did it. Good for you." And my last not for nothing is, how about Jason Witt? I mean, the kid goes through all that stuff to make the fight, and then gets tuned up in like, what was it, 50 seconds, 40 seconds?
I think it was less than that. Oh, that broke my heart. It really did. Nothing is harder for me to watch than somebody who's like, "Oh, yes, this is it." And then it's over. Like, oh, that was rough.
And you see it from a different perspective. I mean, I've spent some time in MMA gyms, but I not obviously as much as you have, but like, there's something about the way that the gym is around a guy before he fights, mm-hmm. and the way they are after a bad loss. It's tough. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're the the captain of the football team before the fight, and now you're sitting on the lunch table by yourself after the fight. It's tough. So I mean, I feel for the kid, but everybody goes through it, and that's the life you chose. So I mean, I get it as well. Mm-hmm. All right. Who are you most excited to see next?
Is that a trick question? Because Fight Island's coming up, and we got 3 title fights.
No, from this card. Who's the person that has you most excited for their next fight?
Oh, okay. I was like, are you paying attention to the things that are happening? Probably Erosa. That was I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing what he does next. because that was an interesting fight. I definitely had Sean picked for that fight, and I think I remember him being the largest favorite. Like he was the most heavily favored fighter. And so there's something to be said for when somebody overcomes that kind of a spread. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does next.
I'm really into this Maurice Greene Tanner Boser fight. I think they marketed it well. I think they both looked. I mean, I think Boser looked great, and Maurice Greene's the story. So that, from that perspective, it's exciting for their fight.
There's some angles there for sure.
And I am excited about Kay Hansen. I do think that she was, Craig and I on Early Stoppage, we did a buying stock in fighters, and you had $150, and I gave them all these different fighters. I gave them guys that we've seen recently, like Sean O'Malley and da-da-da-da. So we get to, Billy Quarantillo and Kay Hansen, and we had like $2 left. We're like, all right, $1 for her, $1 for him. And I feel like we didn't buy enough Kay Hansen stock, so she's interesting. Last side note before we get out of here, and you're going to hate this, but I'm just going to throw it at you anyway. Dustin Poirier may peak tonight. I don't want to. Well, this could be his biggest night of it that he has. I mean, because of where he's at. If you're saying
his biggest night wasn't beating Max Holloway, that
probably
wasn't his biggest night.
That's when he peaked. You got me.
I mean, okay, like you said, it's hard for me to think that it's hard for me to say, oh, he could never be the champ, because deep down in my heart, I really want for him to be the champ. But
these champs,
that division is so, that division is so tough. It's so tough that I think that at least he'll be able to look back on his career and see that win against Max and see that belt around his waist. And maybe it wasn't, for the undisputed, unified, whatever, but it was something.
Well, listen, you said it earlier, and it's styles make fights. And there is definitely a world in which, especially with new training partner Kamaru Usman, that Justin Gaethje beats Khabib Nurmagomedov. And if Justin Gaethje beats Khabib Nurmagomedov, that fight with Poirier gets very interesting. Because for all the great things about Gaethje, he is very hittable. And Poirier got him once, he could get him again. So
he beat him once.
That's what I mean. It does get interesting with styles making fights. So
no, I love it. I love this stuff.
All right, you have anything left? Are you all spent? Do you have anything left to say about this fight?
Dude, it's almost 1 a.m. I'm dead. I was dead before we started.
All right, couple things. So obviously you can see Kate here on Recency Bias. Kate Bisbing here on Recency Bias with me. But you need to check out her channel at SophistiKated MMA on YouTube, because she interviewed Justin James last week, and it was an amazing interview, and you definitely need to check it out.
Oh, such a great guy. Loved talking to him.
And there's plenty
fun stories too.
Yeah, and there's plenty more where that came from. So check her out. Her channel is growing. It's a lot of fun. There you have it. Another episode of Recency Bias in the books. We can be watched on YouTube, listened to on Spotify and iTunes. Follow Kate at SophistiKated_MMA on Instagram. If you want good content, or if you want to know how to listen to us on Android, I'm sure Kate can help you figure that out. I can be followed at SN Cornerman. And as always, these takes are only good for the next week. See you next week, guys. Peace.